and welcome to Indiepocalypse Radio. I had another false start as I forgot to hit start recording rather. I'm back. We're back here with your favorite after con hangout approximation. Your home for the unmarketable. We're back with another fresh AMV night, which I'm just it's been a while, as they say. And I think I might have just missed one because I forgot that was the end of the month and I did a show. And I not to sound like that kind of guy. I don't know what type of guy this is, but I think there is a type of guy who tells you that going to a Godspeed You Black Emperor show is transcendental. Whatever guy that is, but you have to understand that you feel it in your bones when they play. Like you feel the music. It's played through. Like there's no stop for banter. It's just like this hour and a half or so audio visual experience, and you could but you don't even need the visuals. You could just close your eyes and just feel the post rock emanate through you, as it's the perfect ending of building in to a very satisfying release over and over again. But anyway, we're not here to just sit around and talk. As much as I threaten to turn this into me just sitting around and talking about Godspeed You Black Emperor or something like that, that's not what this show is about. This show is about talking to people, talking to guests, and I've got a guest right here. And am I vamping and spending time to try and remember which issue this guest was in? No, not at all, because I'm 95% sure it was 30, of course, but
it was the latest one. I think that was 30.
There was 30. Our guest chiming in early.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
A little sass on this. Oh, there are questions. Oh no. Their question. At least one question is near and dear to my heart. I'm a big fan of this question. Someone is laser focused on what I like. Anyway, issue 30 with 12 labors, part of 12 labors, one half of 12 labors, perhaps you might say. Garrett Steele. Garrett, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. I feel a little remorseful that I jumped in. Sorry about that.
No, that was me razzing you. There were no rules here.
No rules. I guess it is the Indiepocalypse. You can't really have post-apocalypse rule structure.
Yeah, you're right. We are in the muck of, oh no, there are too many video games, and there are also too many guests on the show at once. So what can we do? We're in a guest apocalypse, as they say.
I see.
But no, I just sent out a fresh email. We've got next week is lined up, so I'm trying to get 2 weeks out lined up. And I sent, if we're lucky, we've got a what I call an Oceania show, which is 2:00. Works for most of the world, but not for that stretch of East Asia, Australia, New Zealand does not work because it's the middle of the night.
Sure.
3 a.m. or something for them. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah. Tell me a little bit about 12 Labors and your part of 12 Labors.
Sure. So, I don't know. Brendan and I had known each other for a long time, a few years. Kind of met through some friends in the local video game music scene, local game dev scene, and got to know each other decently well. And he knew I was between jobs. I had been looking for something, and one of the things I had talked about wanting to do was narrative design, was kind of making the jump from writing for ad agencies and that kind of thing, to doing something that was a little more, meaningful to me.
Right.
And
I thought you were going to say the jump from creative prose writing to game writing, but no, you're talking a
Well, I mean,
meaningful.
I do, some things kind of
Yeah,
personally, but very, keep the lights on,
but yes, no, add copy to.
Yeah, well, and we had done started to do some like tabletop stuff together, and I was always kind of nervous about tabletop because I get antsy at the thought of other people's hobby being dependent on me, like reliably having like 3 hour chunks of free time.
Yeah,
And so sure enough, the tabletop thing kind of didn't work. It wasn't my fault that time. But we kind of had this desire to tell stories together, and the desire to collaborate, and he had been working on this game for a long time, and I think he wanted to give me a chance to try and do some narrative design thing to see how the chance to storytell inside a game actually worked. B, I think he'd been pulled in a few different directions and kind of wanted another voice to step in and focus. And C, I think there was also just an element of like, well, if I've got another person in here on this, like, then I've got to get it finished, right? Like
yeah,
that kind
right.
of.
You,
Um,
two people can't dawdle around forever.
exactly. I mean, they can, but
Yes, no, listen.
it's a lot harder when you've got like the guilt factor in there of like,
Right. Listen,
oh
how many
man,
video games are decades out, you know?
yeah, yeah. Um, So he invited me to come on and be part of it, and he had uh, kind of in place like the idea of this kind of like physical labor of clearing this garden as a chance to also kind of clear your mind, process your emotions. He had kind of the idea of this being the aftermath of like a flashpoint of guilt, regret, trauma. Um, and he had a few details about the character. And beyond that, he was kind of like, I just go nuts. Well, not nuts, but just like
Right.
write a story. We want encouragement from the family. We want kind of the emotional high point to be the decision to put in the work. It's a game about putting in the work. It's a story about putting in the work. And we talked a lot about apologies. We talked a lot about remorse. We talked a lot about what makes an apology or a decision to do better a meaningful one. Uh, and kind of how again, all that dovetails into the fact that this person is like literally physically and mentally cleaning things up.
Yeah.
Um, I, I don't know. I was also kind of carrying around some frustration,
Yeah.
some guilt from a previous work. Well, we don't have to delve into that unless you
No,
want
no.
to.
Listen, I'm
But
not here to drag out your personal baggage and air it
I mean,
and put
we,
on.
we can. I mean,
Listen,
it's
I'm not willing to open. Let me rephrase that. I'm not willing to open people's personal baggage because I don't want cartoon style socks to fly all over me and have to deal with
fair,
all these things.
fair,
Because
fair.
I'm like,
Um,
it's a real snake's nest, you know. Like, is this because since socks is a good thing, is the best scenario, and in the worst case scenario, it is full of snakes, and I'm like, I don't know how to deal with snakes, and instead of be like, that sounds bad, yeah, that sounds bad,
yeah, but I mean, that's kind of
yeah,
always the line that you walk with creativity, right?
right,
Like it's like, well, I've got something, I want to get it out there. Usually because it's like something inside of me that doesn't want to stay. And it's like, how much do you put yourself out there? How sincere do you be?
I hope,
How much?
I hope very
You know,
sincere,
yeah. Well, that's I have a really strong tendency when, like, especially songwriting, to kind of put to mask things, to hide insecurities and jokes, which I think is really common. It's like the most sincere song that I ever wrote. I like hit it in the middle of a rap album and surrounded it with just like 20 minutes of dick jokes on either side.
yeah,
Um, so as you tease apart that creatively, there's also the question of like, how much do you talk about that on the side of it. 'Cause who was it? Was it like Florence and the Machine lately put out an album, like, and it was called Daddy's Home, and like the whole thing was about her feelings around her father getting out of prison, and then she like didn't want to talk about her father getting out of prison in interviews, which, like, on the one
Yeah.
hand, I totally understand not wanting to address that any more than you already have in the album, but on the other hand, it's like, well, people are going to ask because it's there. It is the thing that's on the table for discussion.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it changes. Like, there's a difference between like presenting it as presenting your art and then having to sort of talk about it as like it's when like it's very much like the art that can do the talking for you, and you don't need to then video essay yourself, and
Yeah,
and explain yourself thoroughly especially when you feel like no, I already did you listen to the album that explained everything already?
yeah,
That,
yeah.
that kind of went through my emotions.
What is the? I'm sure you've seen like the David Lynch
Yeah,
clip that goes around.
he is very much that guy where he never wants to elaborate thematically on his stuff. Where he's like, the film is, well, like there's like a specific quote to, I think, where he says something, the idea of like, oh, I don't remember, but like the movie talked,
Yeah,
I
well, I think that there's one. He's like, believe it or not, Eraserhead is my most spiritual
oh yeah.
film. And they're like, can you elaborate on that? And he goes, no.
Right.
And I,
It's a true blessing that such like a weird guy has gotten so popular in a way.
yeah,
That
both kind of as a creator and as like a mimetic figure unto himself.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I worry that people aren't then also taking the message of what he is saying of like, no, like just sort of like make the thing that you want to make, and
Yeah.
don't have to feel the need to over-explain it or to like and movies are weird because I think they had a time where real weirdos can make real weird shit and get money to do it, and I like kind of almost like audience antagonistic work, and sometimes I feel like that is missing in more budgeted games, and I kind of get disappointed that maybe they just never had that era, or maybe it's simply yet to come.
Oh, that's intriguing,
Like
and
it's like I
that's
feel
just like, oh, sorry, no.
no, go.
Oh you touched off like 80 different thoughts, which is
Okay.
why I kept trying to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, while you sort the ones that you want, I was gonna say there's very few, like, especially like big budget, feels like there are idiosyncratic voices that it's like, oh no, this is a person's kind of distinct approach to something. Like, you have some here and there, but they well, okay, well the few that there are, like, I think I think David Cage is bad. I think he makes bad games, but I guess. But not also they're not bad enough that they're like interesting.
Who's the Ed Wood of gaming? I think is kind of
Right.
what you're.
Yeah.
It's.
Is it the guy that makes those weird like Christian wrestling games?
Wow, I'm not sure I even know about that.
I think I might be appending a Christian where it doesn't belong, but he makes like really weird like wrestling games by himself. But yeah, no, there aren't that many like. So to pick on, I don't want to pick on the cat game, but can I pick on the cat game for a moment?
Well, I haven't played the cat game. I'm excited to play the cat game.
Okay.
But you can pick on it.
I don't want I don't want to dissuade you if you. It could be very. So anyway, because I saw people like, oh, everyone's so excited about this cat game where you're a cat, and they're like, oh, it's also very French, and I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like. But then I watched roughly 10. I came across roughly 10 minutes of it being played, and there's like button prompts everywhere for like jumping to different ledges. There's like you're basically you're solving puzzles as if you were a human. Um,
I,
there's a chase
I
sequence. You immediately get a robot that starts speaking English for you. And I'm
I
like,
don't know. I did hear people who really delved into it say that it does reward you for following kind of cat-like impulses. Like,
yeah,
it is very possible to, like, knock shit off of a ledge or a table and, like, accidentally, start a chain of events that solves a puzzle. You,
yeah,
you absolutely are rewarded for going places that you shouldn't go, and like those kinds of things. And I don't know, like, with the button prompts thing, like, I was just starting, some like big exploration deal, and it's like, oh, okay, well, do you want the HUD on or
yeah,
off, or, like, showing up periodically? And I don't know if Stray does that or not, because I haven't played it, but I think that would be really appropriate, like really useful, depending on your comfort level. Like, if you do
yeah.
just want to be a cat and dick around, cool. But if you want to, like, specifically wander through this story that they've written, without that, then that's an option too. I don't know.
I guess I've been thinking a lot more about how much games want you to play them and complete them, and how I'm like, no, games should be more antagonistic to their players every now and then. It's a weird thing to say that a game wants you to beat it. Um,
No, I get that. I mean, and I'm all for accessibility
yeah,
personally. Like, I like it when, uh, you know, like, if I'm having a hard time figuring out where to, like, climb next, like, if the thing I can grab is like a slightly different color, that's not gonna hurt my feelings, because I
yeah,
will just, like, spend 30 minutes jumping on slightly higher ledges trying to figure out what counts as a foothold and what
right,
doesn't.
right. And if it looks good and it makes sense, it's not like it's a bad thing. I'm not like it's like it's like
Yeah.
if you watch old cartoons and it's like clearly this is a cell and not part of a painted background, so someone's going to interact with
Yeah.
that. It
I
doesn't.
also realized I said I'm all for accessibility as though
Yeah,
there were a butt coming, and there's not a butt coming. Like, I'm all in on accessibility.
yeah. It's accessibility is always a very weird question. I think because I think there are different levels of like what accessibility means.
True, 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 true.
And how do you
Um,
translate that to other like should a really dense novel is it inaccessible if it doesn't have like spark note styles explanations of what's happening. Does that book not have proper accessibility just because technically it's available in like different languages and braille and that sort of thing? Like what does accessibility, because there's a physical aspect to gaming. It kind of like muddies what accessibility can mean. It's a,
I guess. I mean, I think for me, just ensuring that the broadest number of people can enjoy what a thing is supposed to be.
yeah.
Um, And, one of the things about games that makes it such rich territory is the thing it's supposed to be can be a lot of things. I mean, like, I look at, something like Celeste, uh, which has a lot to offer, both as just an incredibly difficult platformer, and also as a really moving, story about, looking inward and personal discovery and growth. Um, and, like, you absolutely can view that as parts of a whole, kind of this unified experience. But it's also a game that has far and away, like, some of the most minute options that I've ever seen to make
Yeah.
sure that if you're a person who only wants the story part, and, maybe it's that, you can't on a physical level do the crazy type platforming, or maybe it's just like, I mean, I'm 35. No, I'm not. I'm 30. What year is it? I think I'm 36. um and, like, there are some things that I don't have patience for anymore, that I
Right.
still want to kind of experience the gist. um and, like, I don't know, I'd rather, like, play Castlevania 3 with Konami's little rewind button than, like, watch a Let's Play, because I'm still, like, getting some of it,
Yeah.
even if I'm not gonna, like, sit there, on my floor like I was when I was 12, like, learning each and every, like, pixel of, like, Bionic Commando. Like, I
Yeah.
don't have the patience to do that again, but I still want elements of it. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, you're talking to someone who may or may not have triggers set to save state, load state. I
Yeah, yeah,
I recognize that sometimes I want to get through this, but the same times I recognize that the game, like I'm cheating around the game, presenting it's kind of like built, it's like an intended build, but also there's like it's very weird in terms of like how you're meant to like progress in a way, and
yeah.
like
Well, and like, what are you supposed to take away from it? What are you supposed
right,
to
yeah,
learn? How are you supposed to feel? And I'm not saying anything groundbreaking or new here, but as soon as you kind of shove that off into the world to go live on its own, that immediately becomes part of a larger conversation.
right.
And
No one after you make a movie, no one's stopping you from going to YouTube and watching my 8 million ending explained videos, and probably
yeah,
quite probably getting the wrong message from it.
yeah, yeah. Um, but you were also kind of talking about like eras in gaming and auteurism, and on the one hand, I feel like auteur theory is kind of, you got to be careful with, like, you can absolutely see like a directorial mark in
Yeah,
a film. You can absolutely see a directorial mark in a game. I mean, everyone is well aware of, Kojima's various fixations and
yeah,
fascinations.
and he's
Um,
one of those few that I think like feels like weirdly distinct. Like I was watching Let's Plays, and even Let's Plays, I was watching like actual edited ones, which is like if you didn't come up through, I guess, like the LP archive sort of thing, like I did not. It's like, wow, these are like this is kind of the way I want to watch these.
yeah, yeah. But I
But
mean,
I didn't realize like how sort of like distinct his voice is throughout, like, and how like idiosyncratic, like they're kind of like their own thing.
yeah. Well, and um, my personal weird game developer that I will follow to the ends of the earth is Suda51.
Yeah.
And you're talking about games that are antagonistic to the player. Um, have you ever messed with any of Suda's stuff at all?
Yes.
Okay. Have you played Flower, Sun, and Rain?
I purchased it for the Nintendo DS, and I've played a little bit of it.
Okay. Do you mind if I talk about it
Not at
a
all.
little bit? Okay. I don't want to like spoil anything for you.
Yeah, no, it's one of those. I'm currently like working through some of my like my PC games before I dive back into like, mostly because of my computer. I had to reboot it, and I have to like get my very legal emulation hardware back up to speed, as they say.
Sure. Sure.
And
Well,
I don't want to be like, oh no, I lost my 30-hour Breath of Fire 4 save. I just don't want to confront that reality, possibly.
I understand that. Yeah. Um, I hold on, my train of thought. So, like, Flower, Sun, and Rain. You're a detective. You've shown up on this island to solve a mystery. There's been a bomb threat on a plane. Um, you check into this hotel you're staying, and then immediately, like, the plane explodes. You wake up the next day, very little explanation of what's happening. It quickly becomes apparent that this is a Groundhog's Day type scenario, right? But like all of the puzzles are incredibly opaque. There's like literally a guidebook with all the answers in it, and still like it's near impossible to figure out some of this stuff. But then the kicker is you're on this like resort island. No cars are allowed on the island. You drove up in one. You have to leave it in the parking lot. So as you get sent on fetch quests and like tasks, you're like walking from one end of this like enormous resort town to the other at just like regular human walking speed. And you can eventually like unlock like a faster walking speed, but like it's very like you're gonna spend the vast majority of the game just like sauntering up and down these like 5 mile stretches of road,
Yeah.
while little MIDI versions of like Gershwin play in the background, and it's punishing. I mean, it's just absolutely brutal. You want to talk about antagonizing the player, but it's also funny as hell to like a very specific kind of person.
Yeah.
Um, and then like it also like if you want a prayer of what's going on, you need to have played like other stuff that he has, produced previously, but there's like no mention of that in the game itself anywhere. It's it's captivating. I have no idea how in the hell it got made.
It's- he got it's all in that Fire Pro Wrestling good faith or whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Um, but I don't know. I mean, there is room for voices
Yeah.
like that, but I mean, it's always the budget question, right? There's the sliding scale. I mean, and back in the day, you had oh gosh, I'm blanking. Roberta, the point and clicks, King's Quest, and all that.
Oh,
But like, yeah,
Sierra.
yeah, Sierra.
Yeah.
I
Roberta
cannot remember
Williams.
her
Roberta and
last.
Ken Williams. Is that what you're looking for?
Yes, yes, yes. Um, I mean
They're
that
back.
that was, huh?
I was saying they're back also.
Oh hell yeah.
I
Well, that's
forget what
great.
I forget what they're doing. They're doing something.
Okay, well I'm gonna have to follow that up. But I mean, you can talk about scope and scale. You can talk about how easy it is to tell like who the quote unquote director was. I think there's always been a whole bunch of factors that are always constantly shifting at the same time, and some of it's budget and some of it's tools and some of it's the way budget and tools intersect, right? Like, I mean, if everyone has access to, like high powered engines now, um, you can sit around and make something in like RPG Maker, you can make something in Unity, and no one can stop you. And then now there's also the question of like, well, who's going to see it, who's going to care, and that's then you have publishers like exactly the thing that you're doing, and then you also have the kind of like mid-tier indie publishers, but as those get a name for themselves, then they wind up focusing on their aesthetic, they wind up needing to produce at a certain scale,
Yeah.
um, and so I don't know. I feel like I've said a lot of things and yet also haven't said anything at all. But I guess what I'm trying to circle is it's it's a constant struggle of like what resources does it take to make something? What resources does it take to actually like disseminate that thing? Who's going to care? And like those factors are just kind of a constant like shifting ocean of flux, and there are periods where really cool shit will break through the static, and then capitalism will happen and it all
Right.
gets squished, and then we repeat the cycle until the next innovation, or the next thing that makes cool shit available to creators comes back through.
Right.
um, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be swearing, maybe.
No, you're allowed to. I often check the explicit tag when I upload this.
Gotcha. Well,
We are a swear welcoming zone. This is a safe space for swear words.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
um
there is and because I think there is I think we're in a real maybe on the way seeing the other side of a very pop culture dominated landscape right now, between
mm,
just like big budget like games as a service just like monopolizing so much of people's space and time, and the Disney juggernaut being
yeah,
90% of what is in theaters and that kind of thing. But I think
yeah.
bigger budget stuff even does like trickle through every now and then. I saw, and like There are like some like even some studios like I'm just beat aside from like the post game expansion part. I just beat Control, and that is like Remedy is very. I was like, oh wow, I forgot Remedy just like rules so hard, and that
Yes.
they're so distinct. In like in like it's also like what makes games, and this is like Kojima is the same, mentioned earlier, and like Suda and all these different people. What makes them distinct is like not just like, oh, they tell stories differently, but it's like they approach the way that games are made and played differently as well. Like
Yeah.
I remember at some point like knee deep in like my 15th section of chest high walls in some video game and thinking, I wonder what was like, how do we play games before there were cover shooters? And then this was probably years ago, and I'm playing Control. I'm like, oh, they just made good games, or they just made them fun, or that's a reductive way to say it, but it was more like there was like no cover wasn't a linear progression in the third person shooter model. Like people had already thought of ways away, like it worked for a reason. Like maybe things were less accurate, or there was like hit stun on enemies when you hit them. But like they were more mobile. There was a different style of game, and there's no reason you need to stop. But it's just like Gears of War got popular or whatever,
Yeah. I really enjoyed the 2016 Doom for that, for just that constant sense of kineticism.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, if you stand still for 2 seconds, you're going to be exploded and ripped apart.
Yeah, it is very much replicating that original style of Doom. You run 80 miles an hour,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I feel like people have been kind of returning to that well lately. There was that like Boomerang X. I think like Neon White is supposed to have some of that. I mean, I haven't had a chance to dig into either of those yet,
Yeah.
but it's fascinating to me, like the way like individual aspects of a game like that that might not seem that big a deal to casual observation, and then all of a sudden will be a genre again, like a coverless first person shooter. I don't know. It's interesting. It was also fun.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
no,
There's, it's kind of like there's just sort of like something catches on. Like there's no reason like Doom should have caught on, but sometimes it will catch on, and it'll create like, oh, this is how we make first person shooters now, and then it'll be like until someone's like, you can just make hide and cover, and then suddenly it's like, oh wow, these like tactical third person shooters where I have to carefully navigate a space, and hide behind
yeah.
cover. And it's just
And
like,
it's sorry.
no, I was gonna say this is sort of like how you don't know what you had till you lose it, or,
I think there's a song about that.
I've erased it from my memory. All roughly 13 million versions of it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like breath.
Or like
Just
this.
just this cycle of subtle changes, and maybe you don't even really recognize how pervasive something has become until something else comes along and causes that shift. Like it's
Yeah.
hard to have perspective on it when you're in it.
And honestly, I feel like I'm living in a personal renaissance because, like, I'm like, since when? I'm looking around. I'm like, since when did you all like Alan Wake? You didn't all like Alan Wake. Don't you lie to me. I loved that game, and you were all like, man, it's a 7 at best. And like, it's amazing.
I
It feels fun.
I
I like it when when I put my flashlight on the guys and they pop, and I like the way they sway around.
I just finished Alan Wake.
Yeah.
I did the remaster. I missed it back in the day, and I really enjoyed it. But
Yeah.
I also I was like, oh, this is just like, what if Max Payne was Twin Peaks? But the
Yes.
answer to that question is it would frickin' own, and
Yeah,
I
it would
love
be
it.
sign me up.
Yeah. Max Payne, bless.
Yeah,
No, so
I
but then
wonder
like,
if you could do a
oh
thing between like watching, playing. So I did a thing occasionally with a friend where we would watch like like Hellraiser and then like Hellraiser 6, and see like one after another and see like after why after it's so far away from Clive Barker's hands or anyone
yeah,
who had any touch for it, like I wonder if you can do the same with like what is Max Payne 1 versus Max Payne 3,
yeah, yeah. I actually didn't do Max Payne 3.
Well, it's
I
like
don't
at
know.
that point, it's like IPs move around at some point. Something is just an IP. It's no longer the
Yeah,
original
I mean, because
person's.
the Remedy folks did the second one, right?
I believe
Uh,
so. They did 1 and 2, and then probably
yeah,
Rockstar owned the IP or something.
yeah, I think is what happened. Yeah.
And then
Um,
yeah, but that's also like with like the same thing with micro publishers where like Devolver and Annapurna and these types become like developers in people's minds because they hew so specifically to a certain style.
yeah, and I mean, I like that to an extent, I mean, and I have
Right.
friends who work there, so and I'm actually working on something for Devolver right now, which has been said that's out in the world.
Yeah, and that's not like and that's not a unique thing to that where it's like how many record labels and like book imprints like cater around a specific style.
Yeah, it's like here's the aesthetic, here's the brand,
Yeah,
here's
we're a punk label.
yeah. Actually, like my one of my favorite bands had their whole big career breakthrough because they got kicked off of Geffen for making like a Beatlesy power pop record instead of grunge. It happens, and yeah, I appreciate the consistency, and I appreciate the ability to elevate things that might not get elevated.
Yeah.
But again, you run into a problem of scale over time, right? Like you need to keep doing bigger things, better things, more surprising things as you scale up. Kind of, well, what resources do I have to give attention to individual projects? Some of that shifts, and there's yeah, it's like you said, the perception that this is a developer when it is not, it is a publisher, and
Yeah. And
uh
I think that's mostly because I've never felt that with most other mediums that I think that is a video is more distinctly a video game problem than a publisher problem, where
maybe
people just
so.
aren't getting the right focus. It's like I'm never like, wow, I love all these new records that Rhino is putting out every year, you know, not like
Yeah,
I'm not recognizing. Oh, there's no bands here, probably
yeah. I mean,
because
I think you can. Well, yeah, that's true. Because like even if you're really into like sub pop in the late
yeah,
'90s, early 2000s, like you still knew who the bands were.
right. A couple of them probably brought you the Sub Pop in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. That's an interesting point. Interesting question. I don't know.
I
But
guess film is probably running in the way that people like think of the A24 film,
yeah, yeah. Um, which holy shit, I'd still just kind of floored by everything everywhere all at once. Which I named my publishing company for my own music, like back in like 2012 or something. I filed a DBA for everything all the time, always.
Yeah.
And I need to make sure that I don't confuse the name of my own business with the name of this film. But no, I was struck. I mean, and it's cool. I appreciate that there are, like, on the one hand, you're right. Like they're kind of beholden to an aesthetic expectation at this point. But on the other hand, they're still doing a bunch of cool shit, and they're
Yeah.
still small enough, they're nimble enough that they can take a chance on something like that. And so glad it paid off. I don't know what message that will or won't send to the economic powers that be. but what a great little movie.
Yeah, and really, it's just like scale also feels like a very video game problem where graphics always need to get shinier, you know. And it's like they don't though. They can just. It doesn't always need to get bigger, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm gonna say great little film. It was actually a expansive, constantly shifting, mind-boggling film. But like, oh, scale. I think like you maybe you wouldn't call it scale on a movie, but there are still things that like trends that emerge, right? Like,
Yeah.
I was reading a whole article where someone was talking about like revisiting a bunch of Marvel stuff that's kind of like post practical effects, right? Because special effects like model builder stuff are union and CG typically, and um, so there's the big push towards the CG, and it just doesn't always hold up when you get it on like a giant like 4K television in your house. Like the flaws start to emerge.
Yeah.
Even if something's pixel perfect, it's going to it's going to be different. It's going to look different.
Oh, listen,
So
trust me when I tell you, I saw that first Spider-Man. I'm like, that's a computer Spider-Man. That's not a real Spider-Man.
yeah, you can't fool me, Sam
Yeah.
Raimi.
No, even not in yeah. Even post, the last one I saw was the first Spider-Man. Not that Spider-Man. They had a
Wait,
lot of
the
practical in that.
first Spider-Man
No,
or the
no,
third
the
first
the
Spider-Man?
third first Spider-Man, the newest
Okay,
first Spider-Man.
gotcha.
Not the first first. The first. I bet you if you look back, there's some CG, but it probably leans more practical, and
It
I'd
looks
imagine.
Yeah, but there's still like the swinging shots kind of look like they're on like a PlayStation 2
Right,
going back. Well, maybe PlayStation 3.
right. That's where we
But
should have stopped. We should have stopped as a culture right there at the PlayStation 3. We've reached like two more of them. I haven't seen what we've gained out of it. Haven't gained much out of it, honestly.
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely in like camp. What shorter games with worse graphics made by people who are paid more to work less. Like, yes, 1,000%. But every now and then I'll settle in with like, Fallen Order, the Star War, and it's like, gosh, okay, well, this is ridiculously good looking,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it. I just don't want people to like suffer in order to bring me that. That's
Right.
the
Right.
that's the trade-off that's not worth it to me.
You don't need like. Does this person need to work 80 hours so I could see the individual hairs on like Ed Starkiller?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So it's also I guess it's just, and this is always a matter of personal preference, of course, because I will be like, wow, as a person did with like lines, and it's like very impressive. I guess once you approach photorealism, you kind of lose an expression that like it's not quite like a person, so it's never going to be good as a person could be, but also it's never going to have the same level of expression that a more abstract like representation of people is going to have.
Yeah, I 1,000% get that. I guess for what kind of shone about that for me was more like the environments, the color. There was a vividness. But
Yeah.
you're absolutely right when it comes to people, it's it's harder. I don't know.
Listen, it's almost as if there's not really a right answer for any question in art.
Humbug. There's an answer. We are going to solve
No,
art today.
no, I refuse. I refuse to attempt to solve anything. I am just saying the things that I believe, and those things are like. At some point, it was a liberating feeling when I was like, I don't have to agree with everyone.
Yeah, I get that.
No one has to like. There was. To put it in internet terms, people will understand at some point, and there probably is. You'll probably still see it from time to time, like a bit from Keanu Reeves, where he's like, "I'm just done arguing with people. If you say 2 + 2 = 5, buddy, that's fine with me."
Yeah.
I'm not. I don't care. And it's like
Um,
I've had like events with Indiepocalypse on my own games where people try to like, oh, I want to critique or I don't like. It's like, you know what? It's not for everybody. Not everything's for everybody.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. I was thinking, saw someone on Twitter say that like someone was complaining about movies being bad or boring, and he was like, "No, movies have never been better. Movies for regular people suck, though."
They've
And
always
I think,
sucked.
yeah,
Or
um,
that's the worst curse the movies ever had was that the blockbuster became passably watchable.
I mean, I struggle because on the one hand, like, I don't mind if things exist. That's a really stupid sentence to come out of a mouth. I don't mind if things exist.
Yeah.
Let me back up and say, like, when I was a kid, and there was the Spider-Man cartoon, right? And at one point, like Carnage showed up and like was gonna beat the hell out of Spider-Man. Little like 10-year-old me was like, "Oh no, what's gonna?" And then like War Machine shows up.
Nice.
And I was like, "Oh, that's so cool!" Like, but that's the guy. He's from Iron Man. It was like, what if we could do that, but movies?
Yeah.
And flash forward like 20 years, a finger curls on the monkey's paw.
So you're saying the problem isn't the movies, it's the adult children who watch them.
Well, I mean, I more or less keep up with it.
Yeah.
I do, and I enjoy it, and I acknowledge, the jingoism and all of the other the homogeneity
Homogeny.
the homogeneous, the homogeny, there we go. I was adding another syllable. There was the problem.
Yeah.
Like there are 1,000% issues with it, but there's also still like deep inside of me that like awestruck 8-year-old.
Yeah.
So for me the problem is less the existence of it and more like how much space is there for other things.
Yeah.
Like Disney 1,000% does not need to be like bullying theater chains into not releasing, indie films. 1,000% we don't need to, buy all of Fox Pictures. Although I do look forward to like the fighting game that I'm sure is coming out where I can be like Jules from Pulp Fiction and I can get into a gunfight with like Maria from Sound of Music and Iron Man.
Well, everyone's got to have their mascot platformer now,
Yeah, yeah.
Or not platformer, platform fighter. Sorry, the technical term.
It's.
If Multiverses does well enough, I guarantee you there'll be a Disney one.
Oh yeah, and I'm seriously like Darth Vader versus Maria Von Trapp. I'm gonna be there.
Yeah, there's a really good clip from the second Space Jam that does not feel like it's real, or feels like it's heavily edited, and it's not at all, and
it feels like a bit, like a satire.
Yeah, or it feels like someone edited a bunch of clips together, like out of sequence. But it's like the thing you know, the thing you know, the thing you know, the thing you know.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, like I don't like the existence of the Marvel Cinematic Universe does not hurt anyone in and of itself, and I think it's really cool that like my mom cried over Groot.
Oh no! What happened to him?
Oh well, I think the first movie he like sacrifices himself to save the team. Yada yada. Like,
I hear he's a baby now, so he got better.
Yeah, he did. He got better. But like 10-year-old me was just delighted that my mother is aware of who Groot is, let alone could shed a tear for the little guy. So like it's cool that it exists for me, and I think again, I know I always say this, but it feels more like a problem with capitalism than with like the movies themselves, where like it's not enough to have this all-encompassing film juggernaut. We've got to buy everything else. We've got to subsume everything else. We've got to make sure nothing's competing.
Right.
And that's the thing to me that sucks. And I feel like there's got to be a world where you can have one without the other. Maybe I'm lying to myself.
The only answer is it's weird to see comic book industry be like replicated in real time in movies, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like weird to see people be like, oh, here's mainline Marvel and DC, Spider-Man, Batman, all your friends are here. Um, and now on TV we'll do like, here are the side characters, and maybe, I wish they gave him to more ambitious, interesting teams. Like, is usually what those C-listers get is like someone that makes them fun and weird and tries their own thing instead of kind of still being house style. I,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I think that's where you get like the Fraction Aja Hawkeye and stuff like that. Is that
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
cares about him, so they give them
Yeah.
to people and let them do whatever they want.
Give me more, stuff like Patton Oswalt had a Modoc show.
Yeah, I want. When do I get an ecstatic show? Is what I want to know.
That'd be
And
great.
I want to be as strange in pop art as ecstatics is.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, too, it's like things are hamstrung. I've heard a lot of people talk about, and I'm behind because there are simply too many Disneys,
Yeah,
to keep track of. But I heard people talk about like the kind of bold authenticity of like the Miss Marvel thing, or people talk about like Egyptian music from like underrepresented groups in Moon Knight. Like there's cool stuff happening there, but there's also like the need to tie it into the larger thing. Like I don't know, like they we have a She-Hulk happening, and
yeah.
like Jessica Gao is showrunning it, which is incredible. And you've got like several of my favorite people in the world. Like, did you watch Orphan Black?
No, no, I have not. I've thought about it. I've listened to before Tatiana Maslany on podcasts, but
That's there.
that's the most. I'm like this, and Christian Brune, I believe, is he also on that show?
I think so. Yeah.
Then they were charming enough there. I'm like, oh, maybe I should have watched the Orphan Black show. It sounds interesting.
It's I tell you what, like there are moments when it is like kind of gripping, like thriller sci-fi, and
Yeah,
there are movies, and there are moments where it's just like blown up ridiculous soap opera. But like all of the things that it is at every point down the line is always entertaining. But she is incredible as like 8+ members of the main cast, because it's about this like a woman who discovers she's part of a larger kind of conspiracy around like clone fabrication and illegal biological research, and so she winds up stumbling into like a little enclave of more of her that are trying to get to the bottom of like why they're here and what happened, and like whether anyone can help with like some medical issues that have started to arise among them. Um, and like out of necessity, something like that is anchored by her performance. And I like sometimes genuinely would forget that it was all just one actor until the credits rolled. She was
yeah.
staggering.
That is what
Um,
has drawn me to that. Like just the idea of that, but
yeah. So I don't know. It's like coming back to the Marvel thing. It's like favorite character, phenomenal writer, ridiculous cast. Like even if they do shoot themselves in the foot by trying to make it tie into a Hulk sequel and like Thor 5 or whatever this shit, like
yeah.
still a lot of cool folks got paid.
Yeah, that's and listen, those are the issues you skip over in the good runs. It's like, oh, this is why is this just suddenly so boring? I'm like, oh, it's because it's trying to shoe in all this. Like even like specifically Ms. Marvel, I thought got less interesting as like it started to tie as it clearly once it clearly became a hit and
Yeah.
started to like
Yeah.
tie into the larger universe. I'm like, oh, this is not as interesting anymore.
Yeah. There
Like
was a sorry.
no, that I was gonna say is like now that has to incorporate like mainline characters, and then it sidelines like the book's own characters,
Yeah,
or gets
yeah.
or mostly that got more superhero-y and has. I don't like superhero. I guess I don't like lasers and punching as much because it doesn't usually look great. So
Yeah, that's fair. Well, like it was like the WandaVision thing. It was like, well, this is really cool. I really hope that this doesn't end with like two colors of like lightning, and it did. But like we had a nice time getting there.
yeah,
I
listen,
just
it happens in comics too. Like how many times is Tom King going to write the exact same book? As many times as they let him.
yeah.
Uh,
What was there was a Ann Nocenti had a great run on Daredevil in the 80s, and like bless her, they just really let her fly her like environmentalist like bleeding heart flag, which works really well for Matt Murdock as a character.
yeah,
But there was one issue. Like Marvel had this whole big like um crossover called Acts of Vengeance. And I think like Doctor Doom or someone had done this whole like conspiracy to like get everyone's villain to go fight a different superhero
that sounds
and,
really familiar.
throw them off their game. And Nascenti, bless her, just absolutely treated that with disdain. Like she got it in there, but it was like Daredevil's like going through the woods and finds this like rusted out, confused Ultron having an existential crisis and like has to deal with that. And then at one point, like out of like absolutely nowhere, someone's like, "Truly, what an act of vengeance!" And she's like clearly giving the middle finger to the whole.
Yeah,
Uh,
it was very. I'm probably maybe I'm gonna get back on now. I've listened to like a very good podcast about the X-Men. As someone who doesn't really read that many comics, but I love to hear about it.
I get that.
I really enjoy explaining the X-Men like a lot, because I also that's like to one. Listen, you tricked me. Yeah, you tricked me into the one thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about comic books.
Yes.
It's my lore. It's my siren's call. It's like I hear someone talking about comic books, mostly because I like them an awful lot. And I'm very close to writing a very long blog post about. Once I've written my first on co-host, I'm like, oh, I can just write on co-host now. And writing about how Ikoku Nikai is my new octopus pie, which is a very specific thing to me in particular. And I'm thinking about octopus pie a lot more, having just read or having just played Perfect Tides, which is.
Ooh.
I very highly, if you like adventure games or games in general, if you're a townie or you feel like you're a townie, I recommend it. If you're like a coastal townie.
Okay. Well, not coastal, but I definitely grew up in a lot of southern small towns.
Yeah.
So what? Oh, okay. So this is a Meredith Graham.
Meredith
thing?
Graham,
Meredith
yes,
Graham?
of
She has a
Octopi.
game?
Yes, it's exceptional. It's
Okay.
like it's like if you like anything about Octopus Pie, it is like everything where she is like very good at writing messy, relatable, understandable people.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know about this.
Yeah, it's secret Indiepocalypse lore in that Perfect Tides is very much like one of the catalyzing pieces of Indiepocalypse in general, and that I was showing next to her at TCAF in like their game section, and she was there for like half a day before going back to her comics table. And I was like, why are we sitting here showing games and not making money? This sucks. There ought to be a better way, I thought.
Yeah.
We ought to be selling things. We ought to like actually end this kind of like 16-year development cycle for every little game, because it has to be a certain length.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, there's anyway, good stuff. Townies. I'm a big fan of it's a weird, very specific like. So were you like outside like a college town if you weren't coastal? Because coastal is usually like vacation people, but I guess like if you're in a,
It,
or
it
maybe you and I are thinking different things when we say towny.
oh well, maybe so. I just I actually I have to run for like 2 minutes. Frankly, I need to hit the restroom real quick. Do you mind
No, go ahead.
just
I'll vamp, I
I
guess.
yeah, I am so sorry. I will be right back. Please do vamp.
Okay, yeah. So, oh no, my fanfic was going to be explaining what townies were, but it doesn't work if there's not the person we were discussing our definitions with. Um, but anyway, like I was saying, yeah, Octopus Pie is very good. It ended fairly. I say fairly recently. It's gonna. She was working on the game for like 6 years, so it probably ended like 7 or 8 years ago. But it's like one of the classics of the kind of like grandfathered in webcomic era. Oh, least favorite. Okay, so that's a. I was not expecting it. I didn't actually read that question where it said least. Huh. What is my least favorite local food? Um, you know, the the kind of like default pizza style around most of my pizza places around town. I'm not the biggest fan of. Like, it's perfectly fine. I don't know what the specific style is. If it's just like this is house style of pizza. I always assume that is more Greek style because the closest one to me is run by a Greek guy. So I think, well, that must be Greek style pizza. But I don't know what the style is, and that's maybe because it's hard because if I hate the food, I'm not going to eat it, and I don't know like if there's any really terrible stuff. I like most of the stuff. I'm not a picky eater, so I like most of the stuff. But I'd say that style of pizza, that kind of like it's got like a sponginess to it. Maybe it's hard to describe. I think it's like the kind of pizza in my mind, is the kind of pizza you get at a pizza party at school because it's like the closest pizza. It's what all the pizza places make around here, and the pizza places that don't usually make a larger pie, which is usually more expensive. So they tend to default to that whatever
Those
that
weird little
style is. Are you back?
spongy square guys. I
Yeah, I
am
was
back.
talking about pizza, my least favorite. We'll get to that in a second.
All right.
Why all these people putting fucking hats on hats? Real sick of
Yeah.
it. No, I was sorry. I was looking at Twitter at the time, and there was people like there's a video of someone perfectly fine TikTok someone had made of a bunch of cats in the same pose, sit over some music, and now people keep putting their jokes on top of jokes, and it's like it was fine as it was. You don't need to like one up them constantly. Like it's the same joke. But anyway, so townie, in my understanding and my use of the word, is the people who live in college towns and vacation towns year round. Is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
That's
Gotcha. Sorry. I have been that in a college town.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's I live kind of near the Cape, as it were, the fancy Cape that is, the one with the cods. So
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
used to like the idea of vacation houses and vacation populations coming in during the summer, and like vacation
Mm.
traffic and tourist cities. And then it's like, anyway, perfect tides is like if you're in this that real northeast coastal, especially. I don't know because I think she's more New York based, so I don't know like what island that is supposed to be. It's clearly not like
Sure.
Martha's Vineyard because Martha's Vineyard is for rich people. Um,
Yeah.
but like I guess you can be a townie. In my mind, I think it's Martha's Vineyard because you have to take a ferry. Anyway, we're cresting an hour, so we're gonna go through some questions real quick. We've got two
Sure.
for you, both from Soul. Question number one: what's your favorite type of rock?
Like musically or
Um,
like igneous.
I'm gonna allow you to answer both.
Okay.
Both or either. Dealer's choice.
So as far as rock, I'm kind of a music. I'm kind of a sucker for like power pop, like Sloan or like ELO, just kind of taking that rock milieu and doing something that is in turn either a little more upbeat or a little more sensitive. I'm not like a
Yeah.
huge guitar neater. As far as like geology, I've always been really attracted to like amethyst. I don't know if that counts as a rock or not because it's kind of a crystal.
Listen, I'm not a rock. I'm not the rock police. I'm not going to tell you what it is and not a rock.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm gonna go with amethyst.
Perfect. I think I already answered my questions in that one. It's a repeat question. My answer, I believe, was a rock that's good for throwing at things is my favorite kind of
Mm,
rock. A real train track style rock. Um,
okay.
which is, I feel like, in my mind, that's a very specific thing, and then maybe people know what I'm talking about when I say that.
So I've never been a train track rock person because I think I saw one of those ad council things when I was like 6 years old, and they used to just like run horrifying shit on the TV to frighten children into behaving.
Yeah.
And they would like put the rock on the train track and the train, and it would just like shoot off like right through someone's forehead, and then they would be like, "Oh, and also don't do drugs." So
No,
like
listen. If you're not running around on the train tracks, you're not a kid.
I'm
There's,
sorry. I'm sorry. I was never a kid. I
maybe
was
you went straight from you did like the straight from baby to adult.
I mean, I honestly, that's not an unfair assessment.
No, I
Um,
also is weird to have like looking at myself like, oh, I had like, I guess I had a semi outdoorsy kind of weird to think about how rural when you don't think you're actually that rural, when like there is like levels of rurality, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like you're not out in the boonies, but at the same time, like you know your way around a farm, and then you grow up and you realize like that's not something that everyone has.
Right, right.
Or
Now the second
I'm
question.
wildly projecting, but is that anything like what you're saying?
Yeah, no, that is that you projected, and then it kind of projected perfectly onto the screen, and it matched, and it worked.
Great, great.
The second question, which this is what you caught the tail end of, was me describing that pizza. Which
Mhm.
what is your least favorite local food?
Oh, wow.
And I had a
Least
hard
favorite.
time because my local foods are like seafood, and I love seafood.
Yeah. See,
Or
I was never a huge seafood
oh yeah,
person. So like I lived in Boston for a couple of years, and it broke my heart that like the price of catfish and lobster flipped. Um, because I love catfish, and I'm used to just like, oh, I can go catch one
yeah.
and then have it. Um, which actually makes me sound like a very different kind of person than I am, but it was there,
You're right. Yeah, no,
an option.
I, you're speaking my language, my area, and I mean, because my other sort of foods, there's like a lot of Portuguese food around where I am, and it's like, man, I love it.
I does having a cheeky Nando's count as Portuguese with the peri peri? Isn't that what that's
Whatever you
supposed to?
want to count. I'm not the Unless I don't have a Portuguese background. I'm not the.
Okay,
I'm once again not the cop.
fair.
I just grew up around a lot of chorizo and
Ah,
chorizo and
nice. See, I don't know. Like, being in Arkansas, being in Texas when I haven't been in Arkansas, it's a lot of Tex-Mex. Actually, I think they call it queso or they will call it cheese dip, but it's actually probably originated in Arkansas before actually kind of traveling down to Texas. And I love all of those things. I love, just a giant pile of meat and cheese on a tortilla in some configuration. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that I would think of as being a local food that I just really
oh,
have
you
like
know what?
this
I think
thing.
might be my least favorite. I'd have to revisit it, but in my mind, it is not, and that's fluff.
Oh, like the marshmallow fluff?
Yeah, that seems like some real trash. If I was like to go eat it now, It
Yeah.
looks like it is barely food.
I couldn't speak to its fooditude. I've never really interacted with fluff much. I think like maybe my little sister went through like a peanut butter and fluff like sandwich phase, but I
Yeah.
may also be like wildly misremembering and like completely making that up.
Well, you didn't truly experience the Northeast. That was one of those
No.
things that I didn't realize was so regional until recently.
I tell you what, when we lived, my wife went to school, like grad school in Boston, and we lived in Revere because we didn't know what the commute was like or anything. We just like we went where we could afford to go,
Yeah.
and we would walk past like the Necco wafer factory all the time, and that smell in the air was as incredible as the experience of eating Necco wafers is unremarkable. Um, it might be cheating to use a local food that I hate from a place where I no longer live, but I was very nonplussed by the Necco wafers. Like I
I
always have been. And then like smelling like that factory smells like heaven itself.
Yeah,
And that was a
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't think I've ever ate a Necco wafer, and I don't plan to.
it's kind of just like a little chalky sugar disc. It is an unremarkable candy. I'm going to like have Necco Wafer stand Twitter like doxing me for saying that.
Well, Necco's out of business, so
They
you'll get the.
are?
Yeah, Necco went out of business a while ago, I
Now I
think.
feel guilty for saying that shit.
Yeah, I. What about Okay, before I try to get real regional with someone who lived around here and start talking about like crouton factories or whatever. Um. Anyway, we are gonna close this show down. It's been an hour.
Okay.
That's long enough, I think. That's how long I try to keep it. I also have a call after this at some point to talk about other things with other people. A private call.
Oh, well.
Yeah, a business call, as they say. But I was like, I got to make sure I get it done before that. But we're good. We're good. We're good. But in the spirit of not having this show run on literally forever, which I try to avoid.
Sure.
I don't always succeed. I gotta ask. I forgot to ask the most important question. I can't believe I screwed up. Which is, Garrett, how did you hear about Indiepocalypse?
Actually, through Brendan.
Okay, that's partially what I was expecting. That's what happens with teams. Is usually from one person. Then I gotta track down that person and find out how they found out about it. But
Sure. But it's been an interesting like rabbit hole to go down, and it's one of the things. I don't know if I've actually like made a point this entire time. I feel like I've danced around a lot of points. We've talked about platforms and intellectual property and like who does and doesn't actually get the chance to make art that says what they want to say that people get a chance to see. But I do appreciate what you're doing. It's like a pure expression of the drive to just like elevate weird shit above the noise just a little bit higher so that people can see it. Like not even weird shit, just personal stuff, artistic
also,
statements.
that's fair. Some of it does get very weird.
Well, sure. I mean, and that's the point.
Yeah.
I just realized I say
Yeah.
that as an honorific.
Right.
There are
Right.
people who
There's
could absolutely take it as like a dismissal, which it is not. So I want to be
yeah.
really clear with my words.
I think especially
Um,
where a lot of this stuff it sometimes would be like, a popular YouTuber would play and be like, "Oh, dude, what were they smoking? This stuff is so weird," and that's what they mean weird. Weird, parentheses derogatory.
yeah,
When you
yeah.
mean it
No, this is just
as a congrat.
yeah. Follow your artistic heart. Yes.
Yeah, no, listen,
Um,
I like weird shit.
yeah. Well, I hope your phone call goes well. Thanks for taking the time to like talk to me.
And where could people find your stuff if they were looking for it?
Well, most of my stuff is music that is on like Spotify and Bandcamp and places. I This was kind of my one foray into like writing for games. Most of what
Oh,
I do is composition. I guess if I was going to be like mercenary or even like self-aware, I could have said that a long time ago.
no, listen,
But
people got to learn from context clues. Well, where can people listen? They're not gonna. You can't just go to Bandcamp and hope for the best. Where specifically can they find this stuff?
okay, so here I will go to my site and I will find. So if you go to mgarrettsteele.bandcamp.com, there's some 12 labor stuff there. If you also want to hear, well, no, yeah, I also have it on Spotify. Some things that aren't on Bandcamp for like licensing reasons or collaboration reasons.
Yeah,
Uh, I do typically have to go by Michael Garrett Steele instead of just Garrett Steele on those platforms because there is a country singer songwriter slash pro bass tournament fisher who is also named Garrett Steele, and he shows up on those platforms first. So Michael Garrett Steele on your Spotify's and your Apple Musics and whatnot. Um, and then Brendan, who did, all of the everything else to do with the game, has a lot of other stuff on itch, and I should also tell you about that real quick. So, Brendan McLeod, it is sulcata.itch.io. Sulcata, like the little turtley
yeah.
guys, dot itch
I
dot
guess we should
io.
also mention that steel. All these times you've been saying steel, that's with two e's in the front.
Yes, Steele. That one. Yeah, not theft.
No,
But yeah, I can.
and
Thank
then
you so
one,
much.
two. Oh, sorry, two in the front. One in the end is what I meant to say. I'm like,
Yeah,
there's more e's there than people are expecting, and then I told them
lots
where
of
the,
E's.
I told them in the wrong spot to make sure they included it.
Oh no.
But
Well, I appreciate it.
yeah. Anyhow, Indiepocalypse, you find it where you find Indiepocalypse. It's indiepocalypse.com or /Patreon if you want to subscribe and not have to
Mm,
think about it. Slash submit if you've got stuff and you're like, yeah, I want to include my stuff. There you go. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Just graffiti it on the side of a train.
Actually, I did tell an enemy once. He was holding me at knife point, and I was like, "Are you aware?"
I can't wait to
Just
ask him how he
fine.
found out about it.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Thank you.
that's the show. I'm gonna close it down. And Garrett, thank you for being here on the show with me.
Well, thanks for having me.
I'm gonna leave everyone with the final AMV of the night, which is of this All Star session, and it's Martin by Car Seat Headrest. Goodbye.